by now you've all seen this Cortina, but underneath that cover there, down the back of the garage, covered in shit, is a Mark III Cortina. It's actually my dream Mark III Cortina that I was building myself. And as Facebook Memories pointed out to me yesterday, that poor thing has been sitting there for 4 years. I don't know if it is 4 years. It might be 3 years. Maybe the picture that popped up on Facebook was 4 years, but I don't know. It's been untouched, apart from me stealing stuff off it for this one. That there was one that I saved from the scrapyard for $100 when we bought this house. Actually, the day after we bought this house, I bought that car. I've had it for about 6, maybe 7 years. I can't remember. But this is a video I will put together of all the work I've done to that car up until when it sat there. They're not videos, they are pictures. There is like probably about close to 400 photos, but I will talk you through all the work that I've done on it. And that there is a real neglected Cortina, and yeah, less work to do when I get to it, but it'll be a shame if it sits here for another year. I mean, this one here was only ever really a parts car for that one, but the prices went up so high that I decided to keep that, and then that escalated because I had turbo Pinto parts lying around to what it is now. So I'll put together all the photos that I took while I built that. A lot of it was in lockdown as well. I had my in-laws out from the UK, and they were here for a month, and they got stuck with us for 3 months. So in the month that I was first off, or the only month off I had from work during COVID, I spent 40 hours, at least a week in here working on that, and I did a bunch of it. Like, when I get back to it, it will be easier than what it was, but that poor bugger has sat there for quite a while now, and I will upload pictures of the build. Cheers. This is the first time I've ever tackled anything like this. I've done plenty, I've been playing with cars and bikes most of my life. I grew up in a panel beating shop. I've done a lot of engine conversions, like 1800 GTX, or GDX turbo engine with a bigger turbo into a Mazda front wheel drive familiar. C18 to Escort van, that was a lot of fun. Used V8 into E30 BMW race car. Mark II Cortina with an old school Supra straight 6 turbo 5-speed manual. That was pretty cool as well. But this is the first time I've ever done anything like this, and I did it with basic tools. I bought myself a 9-inch bead roller, one dimple die, just an inch dimple die, a cut off, and then that's basically it. Made my own folder, and then went from there. So when I got it, this is what it looked like. It was destined for a scrapyard, but all in all, compared to like the cars that you get in the UK, it wasn't that bad. Then I removed some the sound deadening. Get it sandblasted, I had to remove the under seal as well. Otherwise they won't touch it over here, so you've got to chisel it all off. I think I used a chisel and a heat gun. I did make a rotisserie as well, which made my life a lot easier. And then I sent it off for blasting. This, I know it doesn't seem much, like I feel sorry for you guys in the UK, man. The rust that you guys have over there is just absolutely fucking crazy. I've got a Ford Focus ST170 as well, and those over there are falling off the road. Rusted out strut towers and everything. This wasn't that bad, but it did still have rust. And between the rust work, and there's still quite a lot to do, which as I'm kind of remembering now, I didn't do it all, which I thought I had, but I hadn't. There's still quite a bit to do. I think the car had been picked up by a forklift at some point, so the chassis rails were pretty dented. I think you can see it in one of the pictures when doing the gearbox mounts. Chassis rails to get them here were quite expensive, so what I did was I actually unpicked them both, pulled them all off, put them on the ground, dollied them all straight, and then welded them back on. The old Aussie 6-cylinder Cortinas had a tendency to, especially manual wise, the autos seem to get off the line quite smooth. Manual ones had a tendency to rip the rear arms out of the floors, so I have braced those. The threads in the gearbox mount were all slogged out, so I just cut them out and then welded new nuts captive on it and then welded them back in. I also later on had to add more support to the back for the gearbox cross member for the 4-speed because it sits quite far back, and using the factory mounts to have a certification over here, I was advised to put 2 more mounts further back as well to help support it, so I did. I replaced the parcel shelf as well because someone had cut holes, I think using an axe to put 6x9 speakers in, and here in New Zealand for a Warren Fitness you can't have holes in your parcel shelf. The motor itself is a Ford Falcon 4.1 straight 6. I think it's classed as a 250 crossflow. It's an alloy head motor out of an XE Falcon, XF Falcon. It was carved, and it was also came out of a race car, and it was rebuilt 3 years before I got it, and was parked up in those 3 years. But I haven't checked it. I haven't pulled it apart to see what cam's in it. But it came with a pretty beefy aftermarket manifold and a 2-barrel Holly carb, a huge set of headers that obviously I've replaced. But by all accounts, that car used to keep up with V8s around a circuit track. I've always wanted ITB, so I had to make that work. The Aussies and the South Africans had the most powerful Fords. You know, they got the big motors, the V6s. The Aussies got the straight 6s and stuff. And to get one here in New Zealand is quite expensive. They did they modified the firewall and the slam panel to put the radiator into the slam panel. They basically cut a corner off the heater box and re-glued it on for it to fit. But they usually came with a 250 non-crossflow motor. Fitting the motor itself, the motor is the exact same as mine block-wise. I think up until a certain era of Falcon, the blocks were the exact same. I managed to get my hands on an Australian assembled Cortina sump and oil pickup, and that sump completely dictated where the engine had to sit in correspondence with the crossmember. So that's what I had to do to fit the engine. Then I had to cut the firewall back quite far, and then recess the slam panel for the radiator, because it is such a long motor. The dipstick because the sump's different, and I did buy a Cortina 6-cylinder sump and oil pickup. The oil pickup is different as well. The oil pump itself is right at the front of the motor, and it sits between the cross member and the sway bar. And there's 2 holes for a dipstick, so you can block up one, then move the dipstick back for a rear bowl sump, and that's what I did. And then I had to modify the oil pickup as well to work around the sump. This motor, much like the green one, will run a Davies and Craig electric water pump. Strange enough, the one in the green one is off the 6-cylinder, and I did steal it. The difference being is the one in the 6-cylinder will be run off the link and not off electric water pump controller. And then I had to make an alternator bracket as well to move the alternator around it. I looked at shitloads of ITBs, man. God, I looked at heaps. And then I just started Googling 6-cylinder ITBs, and it came up with the BMW ones. Out of the UK, they were stupid money. Like, not expensive to buy, but to have them posted here was just not worth it. And then I started looking in America, and wrecked M3s were worth nothing there. So I bought a set of, I think, S54 BMW M3 throttle bodies. Landed in New Zealand were about $300. And then I got a mate that's an engineer who's a lot cleverer than I am. He knows who he is, and thank you again, mate. I sent them up to him. I had flanges cut for the Falcon motor, and I'd also bought some Falcon fuel injection parts for the exact same motor. So they came carved and fuel injected. So I bought the fuel injection parts and then only really kept the sandwich plate that houses the injectors. So I had a flange made for that, and then a flange made for the ITBs. and then I sent them up to him, and he basically pulled them all apart, made a new rod for, well, he spaced them all so they're directly in line with the ports, and then made a new rod for all the butterflies and sent them all back to me. And it's a work of art, really is. I couldn't have done it. I probably could have, but I would have half-assed it in the world and would have been fucking terrible. But he done a really nice job. Staying with the BMW as well, I kept the BMW idle air control stuff. I pulled the tube apart, cut it up, and then I welded it back together so it's longer, and then just bought off-the-shelf BMW idle air control valve itself, and then I'll just wire that up with a link ECU. The Dizzy, you know, it was 6 wires, old school Dizzy, but there are a Hall effects sensor in them, so I just remade the cat and then got a new plug for it, and that will be wired up to the ECU. I was just going to run batch fired and wasted spark, but I think I might put a trigger system on a crank as well and do what I did with the green one with the Pinto, and run a trigger system in my home system so I can run direct spark and fuel and sequential injection. This is the motor all cleaned up. Looks pretty bloody good. While I was doing work in the engine bay as well, I thought I'd make some panels to clean up some areas, as the fuse hole, the hole for the fuse box won't be there anymore. The top of that panel was pretty well beaten in, and I had to also make clear room for the ITBs themselves, because they were quite low, that I had to keep recessing that down until there was enough room for it. There wasn't much rust in the wheel well itself, but I wanted to put a drop tank in it, so I cut the wheel well out and donated that to someone else that had a rusty one. The petrol tank itself is a '65 Ford Mustang, and I just bought one brand new, and then had it, you know, made the box section to sit it in there, to fit it in there, and then used a in-tank fuel pump with built-in surge tank off a XR6 Turbo, pretty much the exact same one I run in the green one. They have their own surge tank in them. You can buy second hand because they have a tendency to fail height wise, but when you've got shallow tanks, you don't really need to worry about them rising and lowering with the fuel level. So you can pick them up for $60 and they'll support about 350 horsepower. I was also looking for a place to put a battery. It doesn't need a big battery, and having a drop tank in it I mean, I didn't have to have the filler neck, so I just sank the battery into the area where the wheel well is. Yeah, I wanted to run more rubber, so I looking at what the Aussie guys did, I just mini tubbed it. Mini tubbed it to chassis rails. It seemed the easiest way to do it. You're just cutting out the inner guard, moving it, and you're gaining like 1.5 inches. Pretty easy. So while it was on a rotisserie, I wheeled it outside. I washed it all, and then metal prepped it, and then cleaned it all again, and then fully pour 15'd the inside. Never been a fan of the way the wipers are in the Cortina either. You know, the way they are in the engine bay, nice and easy to get to. You know, it's not under the fucking dash. Well, I put it under the dash. It worked quite well actually. I just figured out where it needed to be, drilled a hole, a pilot hole, put it in there, and then I made the arms work around that. It does work. It works intermittently, and it works quite well. The heater's an interesting one. I really didn't know what I was going to do with the heater. And then I started looking around for a core, and I found one out of a 70s Camaro that wasn't very much. Brand new. You can get them off a shelf here. And then I just made all the rest of it for it to sink in there. So you can recess it into the firewall. So it's right at the back. It's all plumbed into the demister vents and everything, and I used a 300 CFM computer fan, which shifts a lot of air. And you know, the old Cortinas I've had, I've never used a heater for my feet net. It's only ever been demisting. Now that I think about it again, I probably could have used a couple of 12-volt hair dryers, but it's in there now. It's all made, it's all sealed, and I know it works. I completely redesigned the front end. I made it all from scratch. You know, sank the radiator in under the slam panel, and then just made the rest of it from there to fit. I put a breather in the front. I've since, I think I might have welded that hole back up again, but the breather tank has been stolen and is now in the green one. The old Falcon motor is, even though it's got an alloy head, it's quite heavy. So power steering I really wanted. I went with I think it's like a 03 Suzuki Ignis power steering. I mated it to the mounts for the standard gearbox, for the standard steering rack mount from the Cortina. The plastics seem to match up quite well as well. I've even used and rewired all of the Suzuki wiring for wipers, lights and everything. So to the old Cortina style lights, the wiper and everything, I had them all working off the controls. It's an electric power steering column, and then there's a company, Raleigh was, I think, in Ireland. I just sent him a diagram of what I had and all that, and then he made me a little potentiometer and sent it over here, so you can dial it in from hard to soft. I haven't really tested it yet, but I'm presuming it will work. The car came with nothing. I bought the black one as a parts car, and that's what I did. I cut the dash out of it. I used the seats and everything out of it. You know, it had all the GTE gear, steering wheel, gear knob, dash, center console, grille. By the time I sold the grille, the headlights, I'm not a fan of those quad lights. I know, controversial because everyone likes them. I don't. I like the single rounds, and I really like the 2000E lights. By the time I sold the gear knob, the steering wheel, and the grille and lights, I had a car and $200. It owed me nothing. And then that black car, because the prices during COVID went through the roof of old school Fords, I think here in New Zealand and everywhere in the world, I kept it. And that's a green car now. And that's why I got the rusty wagon as a parts car for the green one. Being a being a facelift car, the parts car had the pre-facelift dash, the nice big sloping dash, and that's the one I wanted. So I cut the facelift dash out and put the pre-facelift dash in, made all new mounts, made it all fit. It had to fit around the heater box that I made, and obviously the wiper motor being inside the car now as well. The dash pad itself was a bit of a fucking mess. I basically peeled the whole thing back to the bare metal. It was like just one screw holding the whole fucking thing on. So in the end, I just remade the whole thing, reshaped it, and then glued the pad back on, and then eventually I will just get it recovered. I remade the top of the gearbox tunnel again, and then refitted the center console. The gearbox is a funny one. I've gone out of my way to put M3 throttle bodies on this motor, and I didn't see the point of having a sealed airbox. So when you lift the bonnet, you don't see anything. Purely for the wank value, I wanted to be able to see the ITBs when you lift the bonnet. And then I thought I also want the air fed from the outside. So I went for a Falcon XW GT bonnet scoop. It actually sits on a driver's side in the Falcon, and it is basically there just to cool the brakes. But I put it on the other side, messed around with measurements and everything, looked for a panel filter, a K&M panel filter that would work with the size I have and the area in the bonnet, and that turned out to be a Porsche 928 panel filter. And then I just made it all from there, so once you shut the bonnet, it is fully sealed and it gets all the air from the outside. But when you lift the bonnet, you can still see the ITBs. The exhaust isn't my finest work. I've never made a set of headers before. I knew the measurements that they should be to make like the perfect headers for the 4.1. I do like the big JDM style looping headers, so that's what I was going for. But like I said, I've never made a set before, and those will be getting remade, but the same kind of style. And they are 3-2, and then the exhaust itself will go 2.5 inches all the way to the back with a crossover and a couple of mufflers. And that's how it looked before I parked it up. And this is the last time I seen the car before I parked it up. I'll put up a video of I did a few months ago when I uncovered it. It is literally covered in shit. It's used as storage, and in the time I've had to think about it, there's a few things that I will be redoing, but that car is my dream Cortina, and it will be done. And then one day, I've got 2 girls. One day the girls can have one each. The neglected one, eh? Been stealing bits out of this for quite a while now. Absolutely full of shit. One day. One day I'll get back to it.